Now that we've discussed how to form sentences that make use of loose modifiers, we're going to look at the different ways they can be constructed to create movement within a sentence. I want to emphasize that the pieces here are all the same, a base clause plus loose modifying phrases. The question we'll be dealing with in this lesson is, what are the different ways we can arrange those pieces, and what are the effects when we do arrange loose modifiers differently? Managing focus with modifiers. The base clause will usually be the focus of the sentence, but loose modifiers are an excellent tool to manage exactly what elements the reader focuses on and with what level of detail. With loose modifiers, you essentially have a spectrum to play with when it comes to managing focus. On the one hand, a writer can use the modifier to zoom the focus in on the base clause, adding more and more detailed description of an element in the base with each successive modifier. On the other hand, a writer can move the focus away from the base clause by modifying elements in each successive modifier, eventually leaving the imagery in the base clause behind. Lastly, a mix of these two types of loose modifiers can create a middle ground in terms of the reader's focus. So let's get specific so you can see what I mean. Take our familiar base clause as an example. The bear ran up the tree. Your loose modifiers can narrow the focus on the elements of the base clause by modifying the base clause. The bear ran up the tree, his claws digging into the bark, his powerful muscles flexing as he struggled, grasping upward in the hopes of escape. Each of the three modifiers refers back to the bear in that moment. Note how the sentence stays with the bear. The reader remains focused on the ideas in that base clause. There is increasingly greater detail about the base clause, but no movement forward from that moment. The bear ran up the tree, his claws digging into the bark, his powerful muscles flexing as he struggled, grasping upward in the hopes of escape. On the other hand, the modifiers can shift the focus by changing the target of the modifier with each successive element added. This would sound something like this. The bear ran up the tree, his claws tearing into the delicate bark as the bees buzzed furiously around, their wings humming in a cloud-like blur, encircling the entire massive old beech tree on the eastern side of the mountain. Each of the three modifiers refers to the new information added in the modifying clause. Note how the sentence moves away from the bear. The reader's focus moves from the bear to the bee's wings, to the cloud-like blur around the beech tree, and then to the mountain. The bear totally gets left behind in the span of three loose modifiers, even though he's the subject of the sentence. The bear ran up the tree, his claws tearing into the delicate bark as the bees buzzed furiously around, their wings humming in a cloud-like blur, encircling the entire massive old beech tree on the eastern side of the mountain. Those are the two extreme ends of that focal spectrum, essentially zooming in or zooming out in the level of detail with respect to the base clause. Mixing modifiers that refer to the base and successive modifiers will create a sentence that finds a middle ground. The bear ran up the tree, his claws tearing into the delicate bark as the bees pursued, their wings buzzing furiously around the bear's broad body, his thrashing limbs shaking the trunk as he progressed, lumbering upward with power and madness, huffing in anger as the bees swarmed, stinging the bear everywhere as he ripped great divots into the woods, splinters flying from the bark. The modifiers in this sentence refer to both the base and to other modifiers, broadening the picture in order to create movement and add greater detail when desired. Because of the flexibility of this form, it's more common to see mixed loose modifying sentences, but it's really about where the writer wants to lead the reader's focus. Do they want the focus to stay fixed on that base clause, narrowing in on that moment with greater detail, or do they want to move the reader's focus away from that moment? Or do they want to do both? So, depending on how the writer chooses to modify the base clause, the sentence can create a sense of movement to the reader's focus. There are also a few ways the writer can change the character of a sentence by shifting the base clause's position. Here are three different ways to position your base clause for effect. Right branching. This is the easy part. If you think of the base clause as the seed of the sentence and the modifiers as the tree that branches out from that seed, you can begin to categorize sentences by the position of the base clause. Right branching sentences start with the base clause at the beginning and move forward from there. Ronaldo ate that sandwich in 3 huge bites, like Pac-Man, gobbling down roast beef and mustard in massive gulps, teeth chomping, eyes wide, exhibiting a huge look of satisfaction after 2 days in the wilderness with no food, the overwhelming joy of his rescue there for everyone to witness. The beauty of this form is that it's tremendously useful in moving the reader forward. When the modifiers are well constructed and rhythmical, the sentence seems to flow forward from that initial proposition, carrying the reader effortlessly through the progression of the story, shifting from the first idea to the next, a sequence of micro-scenes unfolding in the reader's mind with almost every new modifier. See what I did there? Here's Melville again, painting a nice scene with a right branching sentence. It is a quiet noon scene among the isles of the Pacific, a French whaler anchored inshore in a calm and lazily taking water on board, the loosened sails of the ship and the long leaves of the palms in the background, both drooping together in the breezeless air. Left branching. I bet you can guess where this is going. Left branching sentences are the opposite, of course. The sentence begins with a sequence of modifiers. Sometimes it can be 1 or 2, sometimes more. Barreling backwards toward the guardrail, brakes grinding, tires squealing, matched by the guttural wail of the terrified young mother clutching her tiny infant. Morris desperately turning the wheel to recover control, pounding his feet on the impotent brake pedal. A feeling of impossible tension in his gut. Morris's taxi was about to crash. The big difference here, I'm sure you noticed, is that the main idea of the sentence is delayed until the end. This gives the effect of presenting something I guess you could call micro-suspense. Something is clearly happening, and as the sentence progresses, the picture begins to become more complete, with details slowly adding to the reader's anticipation of the outcome. Then, at the end, we learn. A potential issue of which to be wary with left-branching sentences is the very suspense they generate. Like the suspense of a good plot, the reader will anticipate a payoff at the climax. A truly good left-branching sentence will usually end with a punch. To use a bowling analogy, writers should not be in the habit of setting up pins they fail to knock down. Show us how it's done, Herman. Here's another sentence from Moby Dick, where Ishmael describes the look of several boisterous, newly returned sailors he encounters in a bar. I just love this sentence for the same type of micro-suspense. The description creates an image at the beginning, delaying the payoff of the base clause while adding details as it approaches the punchline. Enveloped in their shaggy watchcoats, and with their heads muffled in woolen comforters, all bedarned and ragged, their beards stiff with icicles, they seemed an eruption of bears from Labrador. Mid-branching. Following on from the pattern, you've probably guessed that a mid-branching sentence begins with a modifier or modifiers, then presents the base clause. After the base clause, the sentence continues on to add descriptive details. This form is particularly useful in moving from completed actions in the past to other past actions that are closer to the present. Having completed her homework and having walked her younger siblings home from the bus stop, Mary Ellen went out to play, delighting in the only free time she had, dangling off the jungle gym, flying down the slide, and soaring as high as she could on the swing set, all in the hopes that time would stand still for just a little while before she was called to dinner. Or, this form can be used to add unexpected variation in descriptive sentences. Resting with her feet outstretched in the warm Caribbean sand, her eyes shaded from the sun by the overhanging palms, her bleached hair tucked behind her browning neckline, Noelle closed her eyes, allowing her thoughts to drift back to her New England homestead, the mounting drifts of snow, dangling icicles creeping downward from the edge of her gutters, her neighbor's frosty breath expanding puff by puff as they started their cars each morning, the low, hazy sun in the sky. She could really get used to Barbados. One thing to be especially careful of with this form is loose and dangling modifiers. Make sure each modifier is clear in what it's describing. When used properly, a mid-branching loose modifier can add descriptive force and specificity to a narrative. Let's let Melville finish off this syntactical trifecta properly. Like Mark Antony, for days and days along his green-turfed, flowery Nile, he indolently floats, openly toying with his red-cheeked Cleopatra, ripening his apricot thigh on the sunny deck. Expert writers can use all these different types of loose modifiers to create a desired effect at the sentence level. Again, these syntactical choices are another example of the type of infinite complexity that can emerge in a combinatorial system. There are really only 6 options here. Keep the focus on the base, move the focus away from the base, or mixed, left branching, right branching, or mid branching. Yet those options can produce an infinite number of unique sentences, each with its own syntactic nuance. In case you haven't guessed already, I'll say it. I think this stuff is very cool, but a book nerd would. And just like learning how each type of loose modifier can be formed, practicing writing each of these forms will give every writer tremendous flexibility at the sentence level when it comes time to write their next story.